Oh, we're good. Oh, this is a new phase. Setting up your meeting.
Hmm.
Didn't do that before. Okay. Now I think we're live. Yes, we are.
Okay, we are.
It's 4 o'clock Eastern time on a Monday, so Myrna and I are here. Hoping everybody had a joyful Easter weekend, and if you did celebrate some more of Passover, I know it was last Wednesday night, but just a happy Holy Week to anybody who's been celebrating these last few days. Hopefully, that's been a nice celebration and distraction from the craziness. We're going to continue down the path um, of triaging your communications, and I'm about to pull up our PowerPoint presentation for today. And gonna go to, okay. So we've kind of talked at a very high level about how communications flow over time, trying to give you a flexible platform so that since the pandemic drives everything, we're not telling you do this between now and June 1st. We have no idea what this particular period is going to be like. So there are things you can do during periods that are part of your overall contingency planning. And we may get back into trying to tie that into monetary value, monetizing your business as we start to see some of those signals that give us a clear indication. Some people are booking travel. I was on with a travel advisor a couple hours ago, and we were talking about how people are still booking travel. So again, positive energy. There are people out there. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, and then we're going to start thinking about phone scripts. Just that everybody knows, next week, so this is going to be about email and telephone, but next week, we're going to have two guest speakers on from Passport Online. So Gene Colombo, who's the vice president there. A lot of you guys probably see Gene at all the travel industry trade shows. And I think we're going to have Christina Lynch live from Oregon, from the headquarters as well. And we're going to talk about what they're seeing from a social media perspective. So today it's about phone calls and emails. Next week, it'll be about how you talk about social media, how you talk via social media. So it all boils down to your cash flow. And again, please take advantage of that workbook. It is still up on the Facebook page. You can download it. It's got formulas built in so that if you start to plot your expenses and your income, as things change month to month, you can change it in the workbook and you can better understand what you need to do if you still need to trim expenses. If you are going to start charging fees this year for the first time, what would that look like if you implemented certain models by, say, July 1st or something? Please, it's all about your bank account. We all want you thriving by the time we come out of this. Today's agenda, it always starts with the pandemic. So I'm going to give you a little bit of sense of what I've been hearing, seeing, reading over the last couple of days. We're going to talk about priority communications, and these we think are the most impactful for your business. And then kind of some homework. So you are way too familiar, hopefully, with this narrative arc right now. But as we want to just reiterate it on every single call, things are moving both geographically at different paces and on timelines at different paces. So, when Italy comes back, maybe before the US comes back. Uh, the Midwest of the country may be back before New York comes back. There are flowing schedules, but everybody is probably following a very similar narrative arc. We're all under stay-at-home orders as the rate of growth of new cases and unfortunately deaths starts to gradually slow down. The rate slows down, and then hopefully we reach a peak, God willing. That's what's going to start to then trigger municipalities to open up things for suppliers to start figuring out when we can start traveling again. Just to let you see, I was on trying to remember whose website this was. I don't think this is, it might be Johns Hopkins. But as you can see, I'm looking at confirmed new cases per 100,000 population because a lot of us are seeing these hockey sticks. And it can be really intimidating to see that rapid growth and no peaks. So, especially since most of you are American on this call. So what I did was I took confirmed by 100,000 population to try to make some comparisons a little bit more recognizable. And as you can see, the US growth is still about the same, but you can see that there are other countries where, they're going through things a lot worse than we are. And so hopefully that's somewhat encouraging to you because this is based on when the 50th case was confirmed, because, that's an arbitrary point. But when you get to a certain point, you start getting more rapid acceleration of transmission. And then, you start to get to these lockdown situations. But as you can see, China was a lot more aggressive. And that's why you're starting to hear that Wuhan is opening up again. I'll talk a little bit about how you got to be careful about that. But this hopefully gives you a sense of the fact that the US has had an awful experience, and there are other variables about testing. So, for example, I do believe the Netherlands, Germany, and I'm trying to think of who else on this chart. They've done a much better job than we have when it comes to testing. So that also may be the reason why their number of new cases is a lot closer to the 50th day than ours is. But this gives you a better idea of what that trajectory looks like. If you are not familiar yet with the Johns Hopkins website, please go there. It is a great website filled with information, and you can, as you can see here, see both the regional and local narrative arc as well. This is just confirmed new cases, which is a little bit distorted because obviously it's going to be centered around denser populations. But if a lot of your clients come from Denver, well, guess what? You're suffering a lot more there than say, Austin, Texas, or Louisville, Kentucky. And as a result, those people may be able to travel locally sooner than us. And that's why I say the narrative arc is so diverse, and the initial ability for you to make money is going to be based on the regional local numbers. It's best if you start familiarizing yourself with some of that data, so then you can figure out, okay, that's why my governor is saying we may be opening up by middle of May. Just so that we know, the factors that will be taking us from this lockdown situation, we keep repeating these. It's, suppliers are going to have to be implementing safety measures, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. The results by location of the traveler and where they want to travel to will have a great impact on your ability to start changing your narrative. Pricing promotions, we are seeing some phenomenal pricing out there. And it really is enticing to certain travelers. So you want to be keeping an eye on that. And then employment figures. So, we'll talk a little bit about when the country might start moving back in a direction of an economy that's sustainable. But the more quickly we get back to employing people, obviously they have discretionary income. They can start paying off maybe some of the bills they had to rack up, not pay during this period, but that's going to push out the narrative arc. And I captured a couple of things. So you've got Dr. Fauci, who is recognized as probably being the most independent and educated person who's speaking at the highest levels of the administration. And when he says it could start reopening in May, I didn't take that to mean May the 1st. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, May 1st is the beginning of May. I didn't take that as that's what was Fauci was saying. And he did use cautious optimism. But I think if you think about where we are today and how we're starting to understand how to care for people better. So now we're understanding when somebody does go into the hospital, do we use a ventilator? Do we not use a ventilator? There are things that we're learning every day, and that's improving the way we're caring for people. And as we care for people better, then we decrease the amount of time they spend in a hospital. And that flattening the curve is not just about flattening the total number of people who get this, because we're probably going to hit that same point anyway. It's keeping it below a crisis point in the healthcare system. And so that's what Fauci is saying is the flattening the curve is working. And as a result, that combined with potentially more testing, and obviously we need to get a lot more test kits out there so we know who's sick. Maybe the more we know who's sick, we can do more contact tracing, which then helps us put people who should not be going back to work quarantined at home. But who knows? Maybe an office building of 500 people can have 100 people go back to the office building because they are both COVID negative, they've been quarantined properly, and maybe there's some other way that they're being monitored on a daily basis. And now those people are starting to spend money. They're buying more gasoline. Hopefully they're not at home using as much toilet paper, so my supermarket will have toilet paper again. We've got people maybe being able to eat out at the deli near that office, and that's what starts to slowly start to reopen the economy. That's what I interpreted this discussion about. But that may be the middle of May, that may be the end of May, and no matter what we do know is that some of the suppliers are already pushing things out. I just saw something from Norwegian about the Norwegian Sun. I think they said that, correct me if I'm wrong, Myrna, but the Norwegian Sun Alaska cruises now are canceled through like the middle of October, I think.
Yeah.
Carnival is pushing theirs out till at the very least, the end of June. This other news article up at the top, Hokkaido, which was one of the first Japanese prefectures to be impacted by COVID-19, they've actually had to go back into lockdown because they opened up too quickly, and perhaps people weren't abiding by the right rules, and as a result, that's now going to impact the ability for those people to travel. So as you can see, there are also going to be ways that suppliers can try to make us feel more assured and protect us. Delta Airlines has announced a bunch of new boarding procedures, and I just listened to a podcast the other night where Bob Iger was interviewed, and he said, well, maybe the new normal is temperature checks. Maybe everybody who enters a Disney park is going to have to be checked by their temperature, and there may be other things. So when you hear people say things like cautious optimism about the U.S., not necessarily travel, but the U.S. economy starting to reopen, there's lots of caveats on top of that, but that should give you some hope that people are thinking about how it's not a monolithic, yes, we hold everybody at home, or no, we take a chance. There's gradients of opening up the economy, and some of that may include the ability for some people to travel. So with that, you've also got to remember how people are feeling emotionally, and that's going to be a big part of what we're going to discuss today. Just to let you know, from an economic perspective, and I've been following the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index since the 90s. I remember following it when I was working in American Express Small Business Services. It was a good idea to try to forecast spending on American Express cards. And it's, as you can see, the preliminary data is just awful. So people are not feeling good about their personal income, about their personal wealth. And so, we are still in that lockdown mindset. There may be some people who are willing to purchase travel, but, we are definitely, I don't want to make anybody think that I'm a Pollyanna about all of this. Okay, but there is hope. And here's an example. I've got this thing that I've been doing on the side called Travel Unites Us. It is an ability for anybody in the travel industry to tell their story and try to make a personal connection again, both with industry colleagues as well as consumers. And at noon on Saturday, a wonderful travel advisor who is a friend of Myrna and I's, Joan McGee Qualls. Joan got us in touch with Massimo, and I'm going to butcher his Italian name, I shouldn't, Criscio. He is based out of central Italy, he lives in Vasto, but he also owns a palazzo about 15, 20 miles inland from Vasto. And we did some advance notice on it, and a bunch of his former clients came on the call, and they were commenting during the discussion. And there were tons of people who were commenting saying, I can't wait to travel again. Now, this is Italy. Italy has taken a beating in the public's mindset. And yet here were some experienced travelers. This is an upscale product, Massimo's Cooking School and Palazzo. But these people are not pessimistic about traveling to Italy again. And that there's probably a certain number of your clients in your CRM who are very similar to these clients here. And that's what we want to do is we want to have some hope, but we also want to back up that hope with the kind of analytical diligence that you should be having to figure out who can you hope with, because hope is just a dream
Hope
unless
is not a strategy.
there you go. Hope is not a, thank you,
Okay.
Roberta. It's not a
Okay.
strategy. It'll get you started on your plan,
Yes,
but you
yes,
need a strategy.
yes.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go on with priority communications. And we're going to go through some things that you've already seen, but it's nice, especially for people who have maybe missed some of the previous calls. You can always go inside the Facebook group. We are uh, putting all of the audio and video up there. We're putting the slides up there. If there are any tools that you can use, they're stored up there. So you can always go back and take a look.
And they're all in order. They're in the units section when you go to the group. And so you can see them all in order if you want to go back and watch them.
Yep. So here we are. We're at this, some people are calling this maybe the beginning, the end of the beginning is what a lot of the COVID-19 analysts are saying. Could we be at the end of the beginning of this crisis? Meaning we're now maybe starting to move into a phase, that upslope of interest in the economy and travel versus, the dire straits of the healthcare situation. Myrna and I firmly believe that your website is that central focus of everything you do when it comes to marketing and sales. Again, because it's the place where you can capture email addresses and contact information, where they can be encouraged to sign up for a consultation with you. So everything starts at your website. It's where you can regularly store information that doesn't change. Maybe you have, information coming out of the DOT about refund policies, and you want to just let people know you're on top of that. That can be stored there versus an email that gets buried in a spam file. Number two is the phone. We are hearing more and more great stories from travel advisors who are picking up the phone in a calculated manner. And we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes, but they're picking up the phone and saying, hi, I'm just checking in. How are you doing? And we'll talk about how to use the phone strategically. After that, it's your email. We love social media, but how you're using email to stay visible with people is to some degree, it's the number one thing, because you're going to use the phone in a targeted fashion. You can use your email for just about anybody. And then finally, social media. And it all informs everything. Finding a new client through Facebook who then jumps on your email campaign, saying something on Facebook that somebody, private messages you and says, hey, really? You think I might be able to take that cruise in November? Give me a call. They inform each other, but the two number one things you should be doing is picking up that phone and checking in and thinking through an email strategy. And we're going to talk about that now. So we talked about this last week. These principles really don't change. These are going to be consistent no matter what stage we're in. Is that because things do change and you're applying certain principles about how you're listening, making yourself educated before you get on the call, but then listening to what they're telling you about their plans, knowing how that fits in with your business plan, tools that you use, and then how you handle things in sequence. The salutations, letting them talk if they want to talk first before you jump into, hey, so what are you thinking about your travel plans? All of these things don't change at any stage. So keep this slide handy with you throughout the crisis, because they're always going to apply. But let's talk about how you could actually apply this. So I came up with Jane. Jane is our travel advisor. She's doing about $750,000 a year in total book sales. She's been in business about 5 years. 50% of her business is sort of premium travel styles of one kind or another. It's not mass market. It's not contemporary cruises. It's, more, maybe she does ocean cruise, but it's, higher cabin quality and more excursions that are higher end. And then she does a lot of FIT as well. And then, that other 10% is sprinkled around a bunch of other products and services. So how would Jane go about thinking, who is she going to pick up the phone for? Well, Jane has about 1,500 contacts, mostly email addresses, but a lot of phone numbers as well. Out of that 1,500, she's got 400 what she would call active accounts. These are people who've purchased with her in the last 5 years. Maybe she uses a couple of other metrics. She's in HubSpot and she's checking out open rates on her emails. And she's kind of saying, you know what, if I took that 1,500 and I said, who's really actively interested in me, kind of breaks out to about 400 people. And out of that, 200 have purchased from her in the last 3 years. And as you can see, maybe only 50 purchased with her in the last 12 months. So what is she going to do with that group? We want to focus on these two. We want to focus on people who've been paying attention, who have actually, booked some kind of trip or another, and she's had some interaction with them, because what that signifies, obviously, is that they're somewhat familiar with Jane. Hopefully some of these are repeat clients, but also that it kind of leaves the door open for Jane emotionally to give them a call, because they've been close to her enough recently that she doesn't have to feel like she's being a salesperson. So what Jane needs to do in the CRM before she starts sending out emails and calls is she also needs to look at those things that could be a part of that narrative arc we showed you a couple of slides ago that might impact whether or not they can or cannot travel. And why can they or cannot travel? Well, geography is a big reason. Right now here in New York, I think the governor raised the fine for non-essential travel, and I'm not sure who's even enforcing it, but I think the violation is $1,000 now, and I don't know if that's just there to scare people to keep them home, or if it's real. I don't personally know of anybody who's been pulled over and said, "Gee, it looks like you're driving to your family's house. That's not essential. Sorry, I'm gonna have to give you a ticket." But where they live drives a lot of this. Who's in their household? Certainly older people might have a smaller pool of people intending to travel because they're hearing some of the messaging around who's most vulnerable to coronavirus. So who's in the household? This may be a family from Louisville, Kentucky, which currently has a low, impact, and the governor is allowing people to drive into other states, and the other states are not telling them to stay away. So yeah, in theory, they would be able to, but they're older couple and they're actually a little bit afraid. What's their travel style? Somebody who's interested in urban destinations and really doesn't want to go to a bed and breakfast, doesn't want to be in a smaller city. If they're going to travel, they want to, at the very least, head into Chicago and have a really great 5-star meal because they're urbanites, and that's their style. That's going to be impacted. And then obviously, what else about them? Because there are reasons why people travel. Household income, milestones. Well, we're coming up on our 25th anniversary. It's in August, and it looks like drive vacations are allowed. Let's say we're in June or July. Drive vacations are allowed, and you know what? My wife and I, let's go to Charleston. We can drive to Charleston. Somebody, if you can, as a travel advisor, Jane, if you could put us up in a 4-star, 5-star hotel or a small bed and breakfast or something, we can go for great meals. We can have romantic, time while we're there with our masks on. But, there may be things that impact that person, so their desire to travel is better. And that has got to be in your CRM. And if you don't have it in your CRM, then you're going to use your phone call to start bringing that information into their profile. This is a chance for you to spend time on the phone. If you're not rebooking people because you just had to cancel another bunch of cruises because they've been pushed out to October. If you have the time, now's the time to not only demonstrate your care and concern and checking in with your clients, but teasing out some more information for when they're ready to travel so that you have a better idea of what stimulates them to travel. So what does that look like? Well, you might want to start with an email. That might feel a little easier for a lot of people. Let me send an email out first and see if that starts to open the door, because maybe in the email you go to your top 150 clients and you say, just checking in, hoping that you're well. You know, I'm here to offer any advice that you might need. You know, maybe they did inquire about something like when might I be able to book that Christmas market cruise. Your email may have those stories about staying at home but still dreaming of travel, or tips for staying at home. People are coming up with wonderful email newsletters. Joan McGee Qualls, I was just reading through an email that she just recently did, and she, embedded it with things that you can do right now to keep dreaming about travel. So maybe that starts to soften the opening, and then you can tell them about what you've been working on and how you're taking care of your clients, how you're updating supplier policy changes. And that email is now the door opener for, at the very least, that group of clients that have been close to you in the last 12 months. And therefore, that phone call is going to be a little bit easier. They received your email. Maybe you even noticed if you're using a tool that tells you who opened your email, you see that they opened it. And now you can start setting up your priority list for who you're going to call, because you should have confidence that they're okay with you contacting them. And maybe that softens any concerns you have about reaching out.
Yeah. Just to cut in a little bit, because
Yeah,
really,
please.
I think the key here is that during this time when none of us can really go anywhere, we can still work on our relationships with our clients. And I think that's what Richard, all his stuff he's telling you, that's what it's all about. It's about maintaining and deepening your relationship with these clients so that whatever happens on the other end, you'll still have that really good relationship, because that right now is your biggest asset.
Yep. It's a lot of people are confused with all the changes in the policies. Um, what we thought was a good price on a hotel room or an airfare, if you're a casual leisure traveler, you travel twice a year, and you thought you knew what a good round trip to Mexico is, good luck knowing what that is today. Between capacity changes, the desire for any airline to want to stimulate demand, your expertise, your knowledge, the fact that you focus on travel has never been at a higher premium. And for you to just, share that and let people know that you're there with all of that value, that definitely is a relationship builder. So, your email, again, we're talking about not being overly salesy, not being overly optimistic about when travel is going to open again. We want to acknowledge reality. People are going through different, experiences right now, and being able to accept what's going on. I had one person tell me, Rich, I'm in mourning. I'm in mourning about the real world, the normal world that I was used to up until, this started. And I'm not sure I processed that yet. So acknowledging both the reality and maybe an individual's reality. And that's a great opportunity if somebody's going to share that with you, that care and consideration. And you can say things like, well, you know what, maybe at some point when things get back to normal, I can be here to help you take that, 3-day weekend and get you out and get you to see the world again, even if it's just a 3-hour drive to the Atlantic shore, the Pacific shore, Sonoma County, whatever. You can easily do that and say, this is for us to all heal, a little bit of self-care when you're ready is a good thing. And for the top 50, you can segment via email. You can, take the 150 and write a certain type of email, and then maybe 3 or 4 days later, follow it up for the top 50 and say, hey, hoping you were able to, read my email from last week or a couple of days ago. If you don't mind, I'd love to check in with you directly. I just want to know how you're doing. So, there's other ways to just sort of segment based on email. And then once you get people on the call, once again, we want to really stage the call so that it's setting you up to just say hi and start to listen. And if somebody is not ready to share, that's okay. You can start to pick up on that. You can pick up on that better on a phone call than you can on email. But an easy, simple question that you ask to every friend, how are you doing? And just listen. Give them the time to express whatever they're feeling. And like I said, it's not a bad thing for you to say, I get it. I'm spending my days rebooking clients. We had a couple of cruise lines that pushed things out. So, I'm helping these people just try to push their dreams out another 3 to 4 months. I sure hope they can go. I'm staying on top of the situation. And who knows, maybe there are some people who you're designing trips for in 2021. And it's okay for you to say you're encouraged that someone called you and said, do you think I'll be able to go to Key West next spring? I missed it this year. Can you know what? Can you just book it for me now? It's okay for you to say, yeah, I've had a couple of clients who've actually said to me, I'm ready to start dreaming again. Just hold that room for me that week that I always go to Key West. You're sharing facts in a way that you're giving that person hope, but you're not saying to them that they have to be buying from you. And you can also ask them, is there anything that I could, update you on? I've got this email newsletter that I'm subscribing people to. It's coming out every week and it's got some fun stuff. Maybe this person, wasn't in that email. And certainly you can say to them, we're kind of having fun on social. We're sharing, memories. Come check us out on Instagram. We're letting people post pictures from past vacations. Really gentle conversation, engaging them, letting them wistfully talk about their love for travel without it having to be an overt sales pitch. And again, we're going to do that via phone. So as we wrap up today's call, we don't want to make these calls too heavy with too many slides, but we're trying to provide tools that are very simplistic in nature so that you can start to organize yourself. Organize, at the very least, organize the way you think about the processes to get back to normal. And number one is cash flow. So if you have not done a cash flow statement for 2020, it's still up there. It's in unit 1 or unit 2, I forget. But you can save it to your hard drive. You put your agency name on and probably save it twice. Save one that says best case scenario. Maybe that is, you're optimistic that you're going to be booking 30 to 40% of a typical year's bookings by September. That phone calls are ringing again. People are opening up emails. Suppliers aren't canceling sailings and more hotel rooms and resorts are opening up. So you know what? That's your best case scenario. And then you got your worst case scenario that maybe everything that you were able to book, and postpone to 2021 is it. And what does that look like in terms of expenses and sales? But then very simple sheet for you to work on for your phone check-ins. You're just going to write the name in under the name column. So, if there's four spots on this particular page, you may have to print this out 10, 12 times and literally start to fill it out. I'm going to call Jane Doe. I'm going to call John Smith. I'm going to call Bart Starr, the old Green Bay Packers quarterback, for anybody there who knows that name. What do I know about them in the household? And if you do know a couple of things, write it in there. But then you're going to have room in that box that as you're talking to them, you can write down some more. What's their travel style? Your CRM tells you, well, they've booked, 3 seaborne cruises in the last 5 years. Okay, their travel style is premium to luxury, cruises. And they always do a trip to Paris every New Year's Eve. They love to spend, New Year's Eve in Paris at the George Sunk or something. I don't know. But that's their travel style. Well, you've got that. Now, as you're listening to them, you're thinking about what you might be able to offer them when things get better. And then just a general notes box. If something else comes up that they mention while you're talking to them, yeah, we had to cancel our 40th anniversary. We were going to have a party here with the kids, but now that's up in the air. Oh, when's your anniversary? And maybe all you do with that notation that you've never known when their 40th anniversary is, maybe all you do is send them a card or an anniversary email, but leave some space open to listen to what your clients are saying about their lives, things that you don't know about them that might be either triggers for travel or triggers for you to demonstrate that you are their trusted friend, their trusted travel advisor, the person who's looking out for them right now. And it's really just a simplistic concept. But start doing it. And I think if you start writing these down and then you put a notation at the top of the page. I am going to call these 4 people by April the 17th. And now you're going to hold yourself accountable. You're going to get the email out that softens up the call. Hey, I'm going to be calling you in the next couple of days just to check in. But, here's my latest email newsletter. Hope there's something in there that's inspiring and helps you get through these times. Now you've started the process and you're going to hold yourself accountable to start reaching out to those people. Really, that's all we wanted to accomplish today, was to get you to start, if you haven't already, reaching out to people who are not people that you're either having to deal with because they're canceling, having to deal with because they haven't gotten their refund yet. We want to start getting you onto the positive part of it. I don't know about you, but one of the reasons why I started Travel Unites Us is I'm having conversations with people that are just sort of generosity focused. Hey, I want to hear your story, and maybe your story is worth telling to the public, and we'll do it via Facebook Live, and we'll engage. And that's picking up my spirits. I got up Saturday morning. I got to talk to one of my favorite travel advisors, Crystal Dyer in Chicago, and Crystal just lightens my day every day. And then Joan and Massimo got on, and we had some technical issues. But once it got rolling, and I'm seeing all of the clients who love Massimo, wishing him a happy Easter and telling everybody how much they love his product, how much they love his service philosophy. That can also just be the goal of this, if for no other reason, to get you back on the phone, talking to people and hearing people telling you things that revitalize you and remind you of why you're in this business.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Myrna.
No, yeah, I think that's important too. And I think and that's really what our clients appreciate when you do make these calls, because I've made several of them, is that it's a chance to connect that's not about a transaction, right? Because obviously there's no transaction. And what you find out is that, which clients really love you, which ones are happy to chat with you, and you deepen those bonds. I mean, I spent 30 minutes on the phone with a client the other day, and we had like one little tiny thing of business that normally would just take a minute. And normally we would just have that minute conversation and hang up real quick. But because of what's going on, we stayed on the phone, and she told me about her daughter and how, everything that's going on with her daughter, who's just about to finish law school, and, all these things that I would have never known about her, right? Because of the context of the conversation. So yeah, I mean, it's the positive of the situation we're in, is that it's opening up the opportunity to have more of these deeper conversations with your clients. And you should definitely take advantage of this, because when things do get better, and people start traveling again, your relationship is going to be so much stronger. Like, they're going to be so much less likely to even look for anybody else. So yeah, you don't want to go silent during these times. If you're not ready, because you're still at the early stage of that grief curve where you're still kind of in mourning, that's fine. Give yourself time to get through that, because everybody progresses through this at a different rate of speed. Same thing with your clients. If you reach out to a client and you can just tell they're like resistant, let them go, give them space. Like, don't feel like, it has to follow a certain schedule, because there is no schedule. Nobody knows the schedule. I mean, I've seen, like Richard, I've been keeping up with all the industry news and commentary and research. And I don't know, Richard, if you saw that one from Skiff this morning. It was
I
excellent
didn't.
article. You
I
need to go
didn't.
find it.
Okay.
But they cited a chart from McKinsey Consultants, and it had like, you would love it, because it had like 9 possible scenarios. And on one axis was the health issue, and then on the other axis was the economy. And then you could see the different quadrants depending on where we end up. And nobody knows where we're going to end up. People might be traveling in September. People might be traveling in July. People might be traveling not till January. We do not know. What I know personally in my agency, like, I'm not really interested in planning domestic trips to Key West. So for me, I know that my people are probably not going to be ready to travel again with me the way I do it until January probably of next year. Like I've kind of written off all of 2020. But if I was a travel advisor that does a lot of trips to Napa, things like that, those might be possible, earlier. But you have to think about what you do and what your clients go to you for. Most of my clients don't go to me for domestic travel. They go to me because they want to go on a wine trip to Italy, or they want to go to Antarctica. And that kind of travel, it seems unlikely to bounce back quickly. And that is just something I've had to accept. And I'm either going to accept it and wait it out, or I'm going to change my business model. So again, this is why you have to kind of look at what's out there, look at your numbers, look at your finances, look at your client list, and kind of just figure out plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. Yeah. And, just make sure you're covered.
Maybe you got 4 contingency plans. You really, if you've got, I hate to say it, if you've got the luxury of time right now, it's a good time to step back. Like Myrna said, she's looking at her business and she said, this is what I do. My cash flow statement and my income statement looks the way it does because this is who I am as a travel advisor. These are the people that have been attracted to me and what they purchase. And I've got a choice to make. I can either, try to alter that, which probably won't work because it doesn't suit me and it doesn't suit the majority of my clients. Or I can just plan for cash flow and saving money until January of 2021. And that's what a business owner does. And it's so much easier when you have the numbers and you can, at the very least, chart it and say, these are the obvious choices. I'm going to need that $20,000 SBA loan because I got to pay my bills. And, I'm going to stay on the phone and, wait until the unemployment checks start to come through and whatever. And then I'm going to push that into my cash flow statement and I'm going to see, does that get me to January 2021?
Richard, have you heard from anybody that's actually gotten their SBA loan money yet? That's applied? No, me either.
I have not. Okay. I have tons of friends who are ICs, self-employed, who are saying that their unemployment checks haven't even started yet.
Yeah, it's been a slow rollout apparently. So on the different kinds of loans, like the ones where you have to go to a bank, the payroll protection ones, those have been the worst, I think, because depending on who you bank with has a lot to do with like my husband banks with a smaller community bank. So everything is going really well on his. I bank with Chase and, to Chase, I'm just like a number, a small set of business accounts. So yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be a while before they get to me. So it's, but you know what, that it's, again, it's about, it's going to change a lot of the way people do business, right? Because we're going to remember the suppliers that were good to us and the suppliers and good to our clients. And we're going to remember the banks that were good to our business. And we're going to remember, how our host agency was supportive or not. Yeah. And so I think, and one thing I wanted to talk about, which is not the topic for today, but I definitely want to do a future session on this, is we have to get more, we have to get better at the documentation that we do as travel agents, because I've heard a lot of stories about chargebacks, about, clients going back, disputing charges on their credit card, and then it comes back on the travel agent. So a lot of us, do things for our clients without really having written authorization. And I think that's one of the things that we need to stop doing going forward. And so one of the things that I'm doing during this kind of downtime is really auditing all of those processes that I have and all of these things that I have my clients sign, and making sure that I really have what I need to cover myself. And it's something that, it's just come to my attention, like how dangerous it is to do things sort of on a handshake, because then when your client needs their money back and the supplier's not giving it back to them, and then do a chargeback, and then that supplier can come back on me. that is something that can, for a small travel agent, an IC, that could ruin your business, right? If you have to pay on one of these chargebacks. So anyway, lots of lessons learned, I think, from this, and lots of places where we can improve how we do business going forward.
So I'm not sure what, Myrna and I will talk about where we can slot that in as soon as possible. Chime in at the group if you want to, start a thread inside the group and saying, yeah, what Myrna talked about, here are some of the issues I'm having. Give Myrna a little bit of an idea of what you need to audit. Maybe it's a little bit different than what she's been thinking about. But please be active. Feel free to steer us along in the direction that you're thinking. Because if Myrna hadn't mentioned that, I wouldn't even thought of it. So we need that kind of feedback. We did a poll at the beginning of last week, and we did ask about things that you might want us to work on. So please chime in there as well. A couple of people gravitated around a few things. One of them was sort of process flow and systems. So we do know that that is something that you guys need, but some people want us to do more about social media, Instagram specifically. I think some other people were wondering about YouTube or video marketing. How can I use video? How can I overcome the fear of wanting to put myself out there visually live? So we're going to do a session on that. And, it's free flowing. Like I said, originally we were thinking of doing this every 2 weeks and only doing 4 lessons. We're getting more feedback every day. So I've got more of the luxury of time than poor Myrna does, because every time a cruise line pushes something, she's on the phone and she's rebooking people. I really don't have that issue. So I can address your suggestions, your recommendations, and see what we can come up with for you each week. But next week, definitely, you don't want to miss it. We're going to delve into what Passport Online is seeing in terms of open rates. They've got some exciting stuff about what they're seeing on the supplier-based content that travel advisors are still showing their customers. You are going to be encouraged and surprised by the open rates and the engagement figures that Passport Online is seeing on some of that. So please join us next Monday. We're going to have our first guest speakers. They're going to walk us through that research, and maybe we'll build some ideas off of what you can do based on that research. And then perhaps, the week after that, we could do process flow documentation, what Myrna was talking about. We'll definitely do something on Instagram within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and hopefully something on YouTube or Facebook Live video marketing as we get deeper into April or maybe the beginning of May. So stay close, communicate with us. Our email addresses are right there. It's not that hard to find us. If you've got ideas, if you've got special needs, I just did a complimentary consultation this afternoon with one of you. Please, reach out to me. I've got a little bit more time than Myrna does. And if we can be of help, that's what we're here for. We want to get all of you through this. We want you coming out the other end of this so that we can all get back to normal and earning an income. So first and foremost, take care of yourselves. Flatten the curve, stay home, keep an eye on what's coming in and out of the house, wash those hands. And if we get that nailed down, everything else is gravy.
All right.
All right.
Till next time.
Till next time, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.